Superheroes. They are really all the rage and have been the powerhouse in the realm of entertainment for the better part of most of the 2000s and mainly for over the last 15 years, with the juggernaut of the MCU that has been pushing new characters and stories as part of multiple different arcs and sagas over years and has been seeing its share of massive successes and a few failures. And
oh god, you sure like to talk at Ramble. It's like I'm listening to a goddamn weird TED Talk.
Who was that?
Oh, that was me. The voice inside your head that sounds near close to you that you talk to all the time, as you have very little people that you talk to in general.
But I'm just trying to explain to the audience in the form of a fourth wall form way, given my thoughts in this film I will be building to.
Well, I'm certain that, and I know that, because you add all these things and thoughts into your head and what you have to do mixed in with all the other projects on standby, your hopes and dreams, the section of your one wish, which is surrounding the one special person that lives rent-free in your head all the time, or just hits this point to cry, and it's always a point you go on some weird flow of procrastination and motivation to write these reviews. And you go on these random tangents to compare what essentially just a review for the latest film from Marvel that you could have just done back when it came out, but you seem to lay a lot of them with a weird flow of procrastination and motivation, and probably why the viewership and the sub are so low, they're so bored of your approach, or in case you can't understand the algorithm or programs of this website.
Well, you're not wrong there, but we're going on a weird ramble before this review as it is, so it's kind of counterintuitive.
I'm pretty sure we are well aware of that, so I feel it's just best that you just zip it with the over-explaining, stare deep into the camera like how you got lost in the gaze of that one pretty person's eyes all the time and still will, and get to talk about the Red Crude Man and his angry Canadian friend. And I will chime at random points where possible and probably call you an idiot, and let's try to get this done quickly.
Well, okay, then I will. Well, sorry about that. Today, we are going to be talking on the third entry of the Merc with a Mouth. In particular, the Merc with a Mouth's big new adventure, entering the big leagues with his angry Canadian Australian friend with the first Deadpool film of the MCU with Deadpool and Wolverine. And we'll answer the question of, is this film good or do we need to get the green animated super suit again? Well, thankfully, it was a long time coming and a long requested team up, and it did not disappoint, and it was a welcome change to the MCU with a more crude, rude, and full of attitude. Now I'll be giving a quick rundown of my thoughts, pros and cons of these two iconic characters' latest adventure, so get your ear holes ready because I'm about to whisper some sweet serenities into them.
I can't tell you, but it does rhyme with Pulverine.
So of course, like with many stories, there has to be a reason to everything going about in a story, because without an idea of a story, then what is the actual point?
You need to stop repeating the same words in a sentence.
Oh, well, that brain. I can understand that. When it comes to a superhero film, it may have a sense that there is years and even decades of stories to pull from, and then work some elements from the past into its own unique story or build on the wider narrative being presented to the audience. This is where we can get a little complicated when it comes to Deadpool, as yes, while he has had a pair of films already released, they are outside the wider MCU, but with the whole element of the multiverse,
or the small amount that they seem to be drip feeding us once a year mostly.
True, brain. But they can bring him into the wider universe and try to get him up to speed. But this also benefits Deadpool because he can break the fourth wall and talk to the audience when we know he has made jams and jokes of the other franchises of knowing that he has had his own film and help in some form of building to the story of entering him into a world of more established heroes compared to the series of often changing castings and timelines, the plot that goes like this. Deadpool's peaceful existence comes crashing down when the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA, as you can clearly see, recruits him to safeguard the multiverse. He soon unites with his would-be pal, Wolverine, to complete the mission to save the world from an existential threat, if they do not somehow find a way to kill each other in the process. So of course, it has to be a case that for the big introduction for Deadpool into the new universe, that you can make it sound like a simple plot and narrative, but morph it into something that is on an Avengers level fresh.
Or even beyond.
And the only one that can stop it is a completely insane wisecracking killer and finding an aggressive, hairy, muscular man that don't like each other. He has swords in his hands, and under all that grudge may enjoy a little bit of Broadway sing-song over a few shots.
I think you're getting your movie wires crossed, so let's just keep it straightforward, alright?
I know. But in all sense, I think it fits the case that with great power comes great big Disney money to blow on a debut film into this universe. Sure, there is some elements of the plot that can feel a little more grounded and have its issues here and there, from building on the likes of the TVA from another series of someone with long, flowing, glorious hair with a glorious purpose, and where it fits in that timeline shakeup, but in really a case we should not overly think about it because it's what Deadpool would do. Some things could be fixed or improved here and there, but for the most part, it satisfies as an entry to the mutants and a nice send-off for the mutant story that came before from the old studio. So on story-wise in this regards, I'm going to give a 7.5 to an 8.5 on that story. Just a small little area of fixes that could help improve it up a score, but that's the area I'm going to give it with.
Let's give the people what they came for!
Now, of course, like with any project, there is always one thing besides the story that pushes the film along, and that comes with the likes of the characters that are used for the narrative in its unique and interesting ways. And in this case, there is a select few that have quite the focus of working in this outcome, and compared to a fair amount of the previous reviews I've done trapped in this small video screen in front of you, this does not have a lot of characters that can give a focus or review and opinion to.
Bullshit. You know there's plenty of characters in this. Like, you know there's of course the character who...
Brain, I acknowledge the case. I mentioned that I was not going to be spoiling this film. Maybe in the future, sure, down the line if I do a rewatch file on this. But right now, it's keeping spoiler free. And focus on the small group characters I can give some quick opinions on.
Quick is an understatement. More like a 3-paragraph analysis most times.
I mean, you do have a point. I do ramble on a bit, but let's not argue, or I'll have some brain aneurysms happen. So let's talk on the ones that I can talk about. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's talk on the full red suit nutjob himself. The ones whose ass looks great in those spandex. And that is, of course, with old Deadpool here. It's quite intriguing to see how over the course of this character's short history of the comics, that he has become a popular figure to come from the 90s, similar to a certain jester from A Crazy Clown.
Alright, we get it now. Stop doing crossovers in this review already. God.
Yes, I know in case I'm crossing over Brain, but it's a case of close enough to it. And it's an instance over the last while, the demand for his own solo project for years after finally happened, with 2 successful R-rated movies in the mid to late 2010s. And once that big $70 billion landed at Fox's door from Disney, many wondered how they would handle this character in particular, given most Marvel projects don't go above the, the 12 or kind of PG-13 rating. But it was their promise that they would keep him rude, crude, and a killer attitude. In all sense, he does work very well and has still a highlight of the film. Sometimes you can try too much or not try enough, and a main character can get overshadowed by side characters, but this is kind of Deadpool's film, and it's a case to show that Ryan Reynolds really loves and cares for this character after playing him for about a decade at this point, and he has mentioned he'd probably be playing this character till he's 90, but in all sense, it is still entertaining to watch him develop this, that while yes, he is a loudmouth and can still be an asshole, he still has a sense that can learn from it all, and it has its own twisted way. And thankfully, it works well in the MCU adding. I guess we'll have to see how well he'll work with the other established heroes in this universe so far, but we can talk on that one once we see, we could see down the line. But we could talk on one that set his legacy in stone that he will work with first. Which of course leads us to the secondary name in the film's title role, and that is the character that has been a long requested team up, but also the worry of how they would work them in after their last film appearance was a beautiful success. Now, as of course with the aggressive X-Men of Wolverine, played again by the charismatic Hugh Jackman.
An Australian man playing a Canadian.
When the announcement that Hugh would come back to play the character with Ryan for Deadpool, the internet collectively lost their minds, as the prospect that it was a request for years, and for it to be done right after the mess that was 2008's X-Men Origins.
But he did clean that mess up in the second film.
But also came with this concern about how they would respect the character given his last turn as the mutant in the beautiful 2017 Logan film, but not tarnishing the legacy that one left. And while they do joke on it within the first few minutes of this movie, I think how they go about it afterwards with this version of Wolverine has the element where it will reference and joke about that film, but will also provide the respect and legacy of what came from it in this form of a different variation of Wolverine, and how they go about this version from a universe where he failed his fellow mutants and humanity, and does bring a lot of weight and development to build upon in this film, while he also has to deal with the most obnoxious, unkillable fanboy that runs his mouth constantly. I do like the personal journey that he goes on for, as well of crossing over with others from the excessive cameos.
Come on, you probably want to at least tell them one of them. They probably know at this point.
And antagonists in our universe, and in another or beyond the edge of time. But for what it is worth, I think it's a case that they got the 2 leads done well, then I think overall it helps to make the narrative more engaging, and more Wolverine is always a positive. Alright, so let's talk on a character that has a sense of a function for first pushing the narrative forward for the titular hero, and that is the figure in the smartly dressed suit known as Mr. Paradox.
Oh, I get it. It's a time pun.
So I remember the likes of the film was first being worked on, that the rumor floating about was that the set photos was that some of the focus of the film was going to see the return of the Time Variance Authority, or the TVA, that was first established in the Loki series, and one that many people wondered if we would see cameo in this would be the master himself of Owen Wilson's Mobius.
Probably best to emphasize the name as it's close to that vampire from the other studio.
That's true, it's very close in its particular name. But I guess maybe the likes of filming this around the same time as that second season was happening, it was making things messy and probably putting spoilers for both of them. But anyway, with this Mr. Paradox character, he's not a bad stand-in, and for the amount of screen time that he has around the beginning and later in the film is not bad, though he could use a little more presence to have much more of a major impact on the plot. There is an element that builds to how the whole placement of the protagonists end up in the setting for a good chunk of the film, but besides that and having a connection to the overarching narrative focus, they really don't add too much to the film, but for the amount they do with them, it's fine enough.
Are you sure that made sense? Because it sounded like a bit of repeating yourself.
I'm well aware of his brain, don't push it. I say he's fine enough character and could use a bit more screen presence in the overarching plot, but overall, he's fine enough. As for the last of the human characters that I can at least talk on without delving into spoiling all those cameos, of course.
Do it.
We can talk on the established antagonist for this title, and that is with the character of Cassandra Nova, who is played in this by Emma Corrin. Now, on those uninitiated, Cassandra is established in the comics as the twin sister of X-Men leader Charles Xavier, or Professor X. She has many similar elements of tapping into the minds of other mutants and humans and see what they are hiding, but instead of the likes of the Jedi mind trick emphasis that he does, that thing, it's more a case where she gets physical by having her hands probably jam themselves into their faces, like the sense of physical matter to them is just like a basin of water, and how it's done is kind of really unnerving and kind of a bit unsettling. While I will also say that she seems to have some very strong power levels from her own mutant powers she possesses, her presence as a villain can be a little hit or miss. It seems that she is in some ways very powerful, but we don't see a lot of that happen and just see the use of those weird mind reading abilities a handful of times and some other pretty extreme power that they use on one poor familiar face.
Do it, you cowards! Tell the audience who it is!
Shut up, brain. But after that, it seemed like if she had gained control of her ultimate plan from what she learned near the end, I'm sure we would be given a lot more of an interesting outcome, but I feel they may have had a little difficulty with making them more menacing.
Which has been a little issue with the villains for this character, are feeling slightly underwhelming.
Very true. But I am sure if given a bit more screen presence development, she would have been one of the better MCU villains, but for the most, she is a decent to good villain that just need a little more substance to be overall great. There is really not much I'll be giving to this next character, as this edition is truly the goodest girl, and even if she got a little funny face, I would still give this little thing all of my love, and that is of course the character of Mary Poppins, or otherwise known as Dogpool. Having a dog version of Deadpool that may not be the most clean-cut, normal-looking version of a dog, she is still a sweet little pooch that is such a highlight to see become part of this small collective of heroes. Hope that we can see more of her in a near future film. I have no much critique on this pupper, as she is good girl. Look at her, she's a good girl. So this last section is with a focus on the likes of all the other characters from the past and present that I can at least give a discussion on, and that is mainly with the focus of two groups. The first I will focus on is the character we have been introduced to over the two films to make an appearance, with some maybe due to time constraints, working on other projects, or not being brought back, timeline connective issues, or they couldn't afford them even with the big budget for this project, and it consists of the characters of Vanessa, Colossus, Dopender, Blind Owl, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Yukio, Shatterstar, Buck, and of course, Peter.
Everybody loves Peter.
Now the issue I see with this is that I feel they probably had an idea that they were probably going to have a little more of a presence in this one, but probably changed as they developed the project over time and brought in the Angry Mutant. They really don't have much of a presence in this film besides the beginning party and a little near the end. The only exception in this group that has a bit of a presence is of course with Peter, and it's just a case of watch Rob Delaney being a little friendly face for Wade after he has put the hero days behind him, but gave him that sense of hope over time and shows that in every universe they have a Peter and everybody loves him. It would have been nice to see some of the other mutants appear from the group to help in the finale, but I guess it can be worked around for any future Marvel films, but I guess we'll see how that comes along. And the other group is of course with the likes of the cameos of this film, and when they say that they went all in on cameos, they really did it, because we have familiar faces from the past of Marvel in the Fox and MCU days, all making some form of appearance in ways you expect, or some that have been been altered, but for the form of what they had played before, and some new ones that bring a whole new meaning of what would have been a multiverse of madness. And a whole lot of them were an interesting highlight, but it's a case I'm not going to spoiling who they are, as it's something to experience for yourself.
Boo! Pussy. Tell them who they are.
You're really gonna go there, aren't you? There is an element of some of the cameos felt a little overlooked in a way of some past appearances again, and focus on some that, yes, are great, but a few that may be a little too focused on. But it's a very small group of them that may have the effect to it all. It may help balance it out more by the end and intrigue if there was so many more that they had in mind for this. But besides that, the buffet of cameos they provided is beautiful. But overall, these characters for this film are a decent selection. A lot of them help to bring a great appeal and help to push the narrative forward. Well, because it could have been a messy outcome from the transition to the Fox to the MCU. But thankfully, the two titled heroes have been spared from a disaster waiting to happen. Sure, some of the side cast and a bit with the villain do make it feel slightly underwhelming in some aspects, but in all sense of things, I think that if the main leads work, some add some entertaining value, and the promise of cameos and references of galore are acted upon, then I feel it makes up for it.
You are an idiot for not at least mentioning one of them.
Not now, Brain. I'm trying to wrap this up. But in all regards to the case here, I think for character-wise, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10. I think it's just case because of the cameo, because of the side characters and a bit of the villains, a bit underwhelming. It brings down a bit, but the two heroes help bring it up the main part. So we'll give it that.
You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed.
So I've talked on story and on characters, so let's turn our attention to the overall presentation of the narrative as we discuss the world building and location of the film, as well as some more technical and visual aesthetics. And it's a case that some of the presentational stuff can have some appeal while also feeling a little lacking. In most cases of things, I can at least give one aspect that is not in a normal city setting and being something that we have seen a lot of in our superhero affair.
That is the thing that is either a city seeing millions in property damage or some green screen deep space location that may help appeal to the bland cities.
That's true, Brain. We do see a lot of $1 million of property damage, but no one gives a shit because they're superheroes. Sure, some of it will work itself well enough when they use the city location to a decent extent visually or by other means. In the case of that, the film is not going to be that, it's not going to be most of the movie anyway. So the case, it could have been anything in regards. Sure, there is a little bit of some city in the film that is more like a bookending the films of the start and ending battles, but for the most of it, we are seeing a return to a new part of an established realm from the popular MCU series that we've already mentioned, in terms of a powerful controlling system for timelines and for the other of the likes of the place where many are sent for clearing up incursions and loose ends, and that is of course with the element of the TVA headquarters and a place known as the Void, which is seen as a bit of a graveyard for the items and concepts of the past, which is looking a lot more different than the last time we saw this Void. Instead of a more greenish feels and darker color tones, it's more of a gravelly desert with hints of color and other elements mixed in along the journey. The likes of this setting does have some appeal of some interesting set pieces and locations, like a few references and Easter eggs from the past, as well as the likes of being the remnants of some other stuff, like the base of the villain's lair is the Void is using the remains of a giant Ant-Man that didn't survive, and a place where we all meet a lot of the cameos and heroes, both familiar and new, and requested. And as a case, I was worried for a bit that it would have been barren gravel lands for most part of the movie, but there is a bit of variety in the places they'll go. But it did help because I felt it was just a dusty road, some references and Easter eggs and backdrop for a good chunk. It would not be as appealing to look at, but they work with what they have, and I have a sense of variety instead of a bland or nothing of major substance. Now, in the likes of one thing I can give praise to in this instance is with the focus of costumes and outfits for the characters, and of course the big focus was seeing after 20 years since the original X-Men film, the one request everyone kind of wanted to see was Wolverine in his iconic yellow and blue suit in live action. And while there was teases and mentions throughout the series of films from Fox, it was finally brought to full focus in this film that is a sight to behold with the extra features and elements that everyone wanted, and seeing it all in focus and color on the big screen was a highlight to see that it would make some grown men cry when they first saw it for the first time when they worked on the film.
That is quite a feat. Not sure if I would be to that level, but was a sight to behold to see it full, especially near the end of the movie.
Like, I feel probably case if I was there, it might be a bit more, Brain. But the love that they went into was shown here. The same is all said for the other characters, including Deadpool, who's got a new upgrade to his more brighter red suit, so it helps blend well with the blood and the black. And there's a more of a bit bit of a comic expression from the mask from what I saw, but it helped add more depth and focus while still keeping a similar appealing look, and it's said about all the other appearances of the other characters and heroes with callbacks to old outfits and some new with close accurate styles. And of course have to give props to the costume departments and stuff for getting them looking straight out of the comics and just giving the people what they want. And as for one instance that may have a little few hiccups here and there, comes down to the likes of visuals and pacing. As it's been seen lately with many blockbuster films, the likes of the visuals can be massively hit or miss in some productions, and this is seen a lot with the superhero affair, and this one does have its mix of some pretty good CGI and somewhere it may look a little off. Like for one instance where we see her powers do the whole mind intercepting thing, that the likes of her hands will pass through human matter and will have fingers and hands coming out of the face, eyes and every other part of the head, and something like that does look like the most focus was on those visuals.
And probably the case of the blood and death at the hands of Wade.
But some of her tricks outcome make it look a little unfinished or look a bit too cartoony in some small elements here and there. But it's a minimum amount, and for the most part, the visual effects are decent enough and not as bad as some of the other films from this year. As on the likes of the pacing, some elements in this point here and there can be a little mixed and does some move a bit fast and some a little slow.
You do realize you're just rambling now, right?
I know I'm just covering all aspects, brain, as just the case with all reviews. The pacing is not too bad, but it has moments where things could speed up a little too much or come to a halt, but it's a minor amount. In all sense, just want to give some context to cover all areas, but in all sense for presentations, it's fine enough. It has its elements here and there, but all said, it's fine. So in case of the presentation, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Just some slight tweaks here and there, but you know, it happens.
Script?
So in this section, I will be keeping the brief and the likes that I do not have much to delve into on this one too much.
Understatement of the year with any of your videos.
But talking on the likes of the writing for these films are always more inclined to having a concept script in mind, but with a lot of added elements compared to most other Marvel scripts. Now, it's a case like all films and projects of the MCU that they will always have distinct writers giving the cast and stars a focus of what scene settings and dialogue. But in terms of the series and characters in particular, it has a sense of Deadpoolisms, which means the likes of them doing a lot of improvised lines and amongst all their usual dialogue is a common trope that the Merc with the mouth would add in these movies. But it was initially a concern that as the film was in development with scripts and improv and filming, the likes of the massive strikes happened.
Ah yes, the period of time where it was all a fight for better pay, deals, and against being replaced by AI. You think they could duplicate a Deadpool movie's dialogue? They could barely make a decent image of a can of beans.
Some AIs come advanced, regards, but you get the idea of it. And it was a case that because a lot of improv lines come from Reynolds, it may be affected and may not be used out of going against the rule set. But thankfully, the film had its chance to get back to filming or working itself out once the strikes ended and they all agreed to everything and got all the Deadpoolisms out of it. Besides the likes of the good few jokes, jabs, and fourth wall breaks that if Wade started to do a twerk, that it would probably be less hated than the one from She-Hulk. The rest of the dialogue is easy to digest. It flows well enough and works for a fair amount of the dialogue. Sometimes it can be a little too forced in the jokes or dialogue that feels a little too overly intricate or unnecessary, but for the most part, when it wants to be lighthearted and goofy, it does it well enough. And when it wants to have some serious horror moments, it works them in at points that feel like it was built up to it or has a purpose. And most of the time, it works. Like I said, not everything will be perfect or fit well and maybe a little forced, but for now, it comes about for the most part. If it fits the bill and tells the tale well enough, then so be it.
Way to keep it brief.
Well, it's briefer than all the other ones, brain. But anyway, the case since in the writing, I'm going to give an 8 to an 8.5. I think it's good enough in that regards, but some bits can get a bit overdone. As for one other section I will be delving a little brief discussion on comes to us from the sounds of melodies that you may hear while on a big adventure that you know in your head is present, but you choose to ignore it to not make it overly self-aware, and that's of course with the focus of the music to a movie. Now it's a case that the films have had a different music composer for each movie, with Junkie XL being the first film's music maker, and then Tyler Bates for its follow-up. Now we have Rob Simonson, who is a long-time collaborator with the film director of Sean Levy, to give the film a sense of flair and pompous with his own take on an album of tracks that feels like it is directly taken out of the Guardian's book of music, with a focus on all licensed songs and their own personal theme. And I really do like when films films use licensed tracks in a unique way instead of just randomly pulling them in amongst the music that they feel like it works their projects, but they don't need them at all.
Which is what I say about mainly Illumination movies, especially that Mario one.
Very true, Brain. And you can, if they have an instance, you can check my review on that, on my thoughts in that regards. Anyways, and they work in the likes of a Deadpool way from the opening number of Bye 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 from NSYNC, Madonna's Like a Prayer, Fergie's Glamorous, Power Love from Huey Lewis and the News, and even the likes of a subtle reference to a certain showman in there, and the closing song to Grease. They all work in their own unique ways in some regards. Sure, some have a slight underuse or feel they didn't need to be in this, but in all sense of purpose, sometimes a jukebox soundtrack works best when done and chosen well enough for scenes or playing off syncing of moments happening on screen that with a few more small extra additions and it would be a perfect masterpiece.
Just don't make it a jukebox soundtrack for every movie. Some riddles work too.
But in all case one, the music wise, I'm going to give this one a 9. Just this time ends round. Don't always do a jukebox music one, but we'll do for this regards because it's Deadpool.
I'm gonna fight you now.
Now I can already sense you will question, how can you say there was problems with this movie? It is perfect. Well, it's a case that, yeah, films can be perfect, but like any film, it also has some flaws. But it's a case that there are some small issues or each section as you see the scores, the higher or lower a score is, the more or less I critique about in a project. And I'll be giving a quick few issues or fixes that would have made it feel that much more better, but I will stop rambling and I'll just get to the point.
Okay, now you're getting it.
I know, Brain. Anyways, we'll start with the story. This is mainly the elements of some of the plot aspects and time placements of the film can be a little confusing or feel not fully fleshed out, like the outcome for a fair chunk of characters' appearance, or some elements if it connects to the other series and projects that involves the focus department of time anomalies and other issues. But I think with some understanding of where on the timeline is set, if some characters appear before or after the main series that use them, but they are only some aspects of the plot that would need a bit of a fix up to perfectly provide a top masterpiece, but it works in the overall establishment of what is presented here.
You're really losing the plot of focus here.
Brain, you know me at this point. Don't question my method of madness. Anyways, case then, we're going to characters. This is mainly coming down to the likes of the issues and underuse of some certain characters, particularly with the main villains and the side characters. They're feeling like fully developed or have much to do and could use more screen time focus instead of being a crutch to save with minimal presence, bar at the beginning and a little near the end. The villain had a bit more to do, but still needs a little more screen time to have more of a development or presence, but I think the film benefits with the leading duo are done well, and some of the cameo appearances help make up for some side character and villain hiccups, even as an element if it feels lacking. Right, next, presentation. The section, as I mentioned, it was more on some of the locations of the world building feeling a little lacking, but it is not overly focused of issue with them, with more on the complaints I go with the element of a few issues here and there with the visuals and pacing elements.
You are really pulling straws at this rate, mate.
But however, Brain, it is in the small elements and not the case of looking like a rush job to do it, and only in small instances, so it's not fully rendered.
Right. Keep telling yourself that.
Anyways, writing. A surprising amount I would say comes for the likes of the writing is a sense of some of the jokes being a little forced, which I can get the likes of. It has the element of some of the other MCU projects where everything can feel like it's just being added with a sense of everything needs to be ended with a joke. Will not always work, but it's only a small amount of jokes and stuff that don't work or fall flat. Maybe not overly crude as I have learned, as they were stopped by the big execs of Disney as of that mouse that may be in public domain.
Which is saying something that they will get mad about one joke when they have done a lot more shady things.
True. But keep that to ourselves, avoid the bad books of the studio in regards. And lastly, the case with music. The last section to talk on is, of course, the music is really down to the likes of the focus of the music tracks is that I do not have much of an issue with this. Maybe just need a little few more original tracks in the movies that would fit the tone in there as well. And the case of maybe some other ones that would actually fit the tone of like a jukebox musical and some things. Like a few more in there to help balance out the licensed songs. But I'm sure it would have worked more with license over main ones.
It's really saying something if you're preferring the alternative version to the normal form of original over license.
Well, it can be some strange times that things can happen. Well, that's mainly a list of complaints that we would have with this film.
You might, but you're on your own here.
Anyway, let us wrap up and see the final overall thoughts on the film itself.
Let's fucking go! Let's fucking go.
So in the overall sense of things, when it was initially a concern with transitioning the unhinged nature of the Merc with the mouth from the R-rating Foxverse to the more cleaner MCU, as well as the respecting for a character that had a beautiful send-off, the overall product of Deadpool Wolverine turned out to be a successful transition of keeping it rude, crude, and action-packed with attitude, of being a great follow-up to the original duology and probably be on par to the original or Logan in terms of quality and entertainment. Sure, there's these small nitpicks I have.
Yeah, not saying anything on that.
But at the end of the day, it is also about having a long requested team up done right after the mess of 08, as a case of hoping to see more of these two again real soon, whether it's joining with more of the fellow mutants, joining the universe, or teaming up to take on Kang or Doom or whoever they may throw out of nowhere at this point.
Kang may have knocked his chances down a peg, but we don't know if he still will come around.
But seeing the foul-mouthed red guy and his angry Canadian-Australian friend in the near future will always be a positive in my eyes. Sorry, in our eyes.
We use the same eyes, dum-dum.
But anyways, to round up the case on the final scores here, I scored a case of story with a 7.5 to 8.5, characters with an 8, presentation with an 8 to an 8.5, writing with an 8 to an 8.5, and music with a 9. So a total score out of 50, I'm going to give a 40.5 to a 42.5, or around 81 to 85%. So a B plus to A minus. Well, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and opinions on this, as well as the budding quotes from the brain here.
What you call me?
But it's a case that, of course, that is my own opinion, and everyone's entitled to their own thoughts that some may agree or disagree with, and that is totally fine, as not everyone will agree, and having a friendly discourse can make an experience much more appealing.
May not work out all the same. Have you been on the internet before?
Yes, I am aware of Brain, and I know there's plenty of people that can keep things civil, so in all sense, there is a way and open to all conversation and looking for a neutral perspective and see where they are coming from on their thoughts. But I would love to, in regards to the case, to hear your own thoughts about them down below and your thoughts on the film, of if you loved it, you hated it, you were disappointed, you were pleasantly surprised, or all other forms of opinions and emotions from this film, and you can let me know down below and we can discuss the thoughts there. But anyways, I shall probably leave it there for now. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hear my random word soup of a review, and I hope you will come back again for more reviews and blogs and all other things from me. And if you did, why not simply like and subscribe, as I upload new videos every single week and more reviews when I have the time to do it, when I have the energy and procrastination is not in the way, as the brain has mentioned in the past. But maybe the brain thoughts can come back in all particular. As always, I hope you all stay being wonderful people, and I have a great day every day, doing many great things. I'd like to thank the Brain for being a surprise commentator for this, even though he was not invited. But say bye, Brain.
Well, adios, folks, and like and sub to this video on all of his socials. Okay, bye. I'm gonna shut up and just annoy him internally.
And I shall see you all in the next review in that regards. So take care, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.